How I learned English quickly. Learning English quickly might sound like an impossible challenge, but with the right approach, it's entirely achievable. When I first set out to improve my English in just a few months, I knew traditional studying alone wouldn't be enough. Instead, I immersed myself in the language, turning everyday moments into learning opportunities. What made the difference was treating English not as a subject to memorize, but as a skill to practice daily. I stopped worrying about perfection and focused on progress, whether through conversations, movies, or even thinking in English. The key was consistency, adaptability, and a willingness to step out of my comfort zone. Looking back, the journey wasn't always easy, but the results were worth it. In just a short time, I went from hesitating over simple sentences to expressing myself confidently. If you're ready to put in the effort, you can do the same. Here's how. The most effective way to learn English quickly is to surround yourself with the language as much as possible. I started by changing the language settings on my phone, computer, and social media to English. At first, it felt strange, but soon, I began thinking in English without even realizing it. Small changes like this helped me absorb vocabulary naturally. I also made English part of my daily entertainment. Instead of watching movies or shows in my native language, I switched to English with subtitles, then gradually removed them. Listening to English podcasts during commutes and reading news articles or books in English further trained my brain to process the language faster. Even music became a learning tool. I looked up lyrics and sang along to improve pronunciation. The real breakthrough came when I started thinking in English throughout the day. I described my actions, made mental notes, and even talked to myself in English. This constant exposure rewired my brain to understand and respond in English more naturally. Immersion isn't just about studying, it's about living the language every single day. Active practice was the game changer that transformed my passive understanding into real fluency. I forced myself to speak English daily, even when it felt uncomfortable at first. Language exchange apps connected me with native speakers for regular conversations, where making mistakes was actually encouraged. Every awkward pause and correction became a valuable lesson that textbooks couldn't provide. I took this practice beyond digital interactions by joining local English meetups. Face-to-face conversations pushed me to think faster and improved my ability to understand different accents. When I couldn't find speaking partners, I recorded voice memos analyzing my day or debating imaginary topics. Hearing my own progress over time boosted my confidence tremendously. Writing became another powerful tool. I switched all my personal journaling to English, wrote social media posts, and even commented on forums. The more I actively produced language instead of just consuming it, the more natural English started to feel. True fluency began when I could express complex thoughts without mentally translating from my native language first. Building vocabulary quickly wasn't about memorizing dictionaries, but learning strategically. I focused on high-frequency words first, the ones that appeared constantly in conversations, movies, and articles. Instead of studying random lists, I collected phrases and collocations from real contexts, noticing how native speakers naturally combine words. This helped me sound more authentic right away. I turned vocabulary acquisition into a daily game using spaced repetition apps, but with a twist. I only added words I'd actually encountered in my immersion activities. For tricky words, I created vivid mental images or funny associations that made them stick. The real breakthrough came when I started grouping new words by themes or situations, like coffee shop vocabulary or work meeting phrases, which I could immediately practice in real-life scenarios. Most importantly, I prioritized active recall over passive recognition. Rather than just understanding words when reading, I challenged myself to use them in speaking and writing. Keeping a word of the day journal, where I crafted sentences with new vocabulary, cemented them in my memory far better than simple repetition ever could. Mastering English grammar became much easier when I stopped trying to learn every rule at once and focused instead on patterns. I started noticing how tenses and structures were actually used in real conversations, books, and shows, not just how they appeared in textbooks. This context helped grammar feel less abstract and more like a natural part of communication. I created a personalized cheat sheet of the most essential grammar points I needed for daily conversations, like verb tenses for telling stories or modal verbs for making requests. Instead of memorizing rules, I practiced them through sentence-building games and by imitating native speaker phrasing from movies and podcasts. When I made mistakes, I kept a log to spot recurring patterns in my errors. The real turning point came when I stopped translating grammar from my native language and started thinking directly in English structures. I began with simple frames like, "I've never," or "what if we," and gradually expanded them. By learning grammar through usage rather than theory, the rules became intuitive rather than something I had to consciously remember. The biggest lesson I learned was that regular, perfect practice beats occasional perfect studying. Instead of waiting until I felt ready, I made English a non-negotiable daily habit. Even just 15 minutes of focused practice counted. Some days I only managed to describe my morning routine aloud in English while making coffee. Other days I wrote short paragraphs about my day. What mattered was maintaining the streak. I stopped obsessing over mistakes and started viewing them as proof I was pushing my boundaries. When motivation faded, I relied on systems rather than willpower, scheduled language exchanges, English-only hours, and accountability partners. Tracking small wins in a progress journal kept me going, noticing I could suddenly understand song lyrics or recall words without hesitation showed me how far consistent effort had taken me. Fluency didn't come from any single breakthrough moment, but from hundreds of small, deliberate practices accumulated over time. By focusing on showing up daily rather than chasing perfection, I built unstoppable momentum that made English feel increasingly natural. Until one day, I realized I wasn't translating in my head anymore, I was simply thinking in English. Looking back, the results surprised even me. Within 3 months of this immersive, consistent approach, I went from hesitant, textbook English to fluid conversations with native speakers. I could finally watch movies without subtitles, catch the nuances in podcasts, and express my thoughts without mentally translating. The language had stopped being a subject to study, it became a natural part of my daily life. The most rewarding moment came when a colleague asked if I'd lived abroad. Shocked to learn, only seriously studied English for a few months. My vocabulary wasn't perfect, and I still made occasional grammar mistakes, but none of that mattered. I could communicate ideas effortlessly, understand different accents, and even dream in English. The rapid progress proved that with the right strategies, dramatic improvement is possible in a surprisingly short time. This journey taught me that fluency isn't about knowing every word or rule, it's about developing the confidence and skills to use what you know effectively. Now, when people ask how long it takes to learn English, I tell them it's not about time, it's about how completely you're willing to live the language every single day.